Hello, brothers and sisters. I am George, a lay disciple here in Verbum de Pasig. Last week, Sister Jenny spoke to us about God's identity as Father. What really struck me about her talk was when she mentioned that God is a Father who loves us, wants to be close to us, and who knows and formed our deepest self. This is God our Father. And in fact, it's very different from the apostles' expectations of God as a Father. It was very different from how they knew Him. Like the apostles, it's important for us to understand what God's fatherhood really means to us at a deep and personal level. Our earthly fathers are among the most important people in our lives, especially during our childhood. And in fact, they affect our lives in very long-lasting ways. Now, we've all had experiences with our own fathers, and I'm sure you will agree with me when I say it's not that easy to understand our fathers. I remember once when my daughter Maya took a picture of scenery during a trip that we took together. And when she showed me the picture, she described how the photo did not actually do justice to what was actually happening. It didn't capture the emotions of the people, the breeze that was blowing, the smell of the grass, and all those things that you will notice only when you're really there. In fact, I realized that my own perceptions made me think about the picture in a totally different way. In the same way, our own limited perceptions and biases, our own experiences, can give us wrong notions of both our earthly fathers and of God as our heavenly Father. Let's take the story of the prodigal son in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, verses 11 to 31. Both of the sons in the story, the younger son and the elder son, had a very limited view of their father. Let's recall first the younger son, the part of the story that I think we're very familiar with. He is the younger son who asked for his share of the inheritance and who left the family to spend the money on wild living. I was surprised to learn that in Jewish tradition, when a younger son asks for his share of the inheritance while the father was still alive, what it actually means is that the son is separating himself from the father. It's like saying, well, just give me my money and then we can part ways. So it means that the son was willing to exchange his relationship with the father and his membership in the family just for the inheritance and the money that he would receive. When I was in elementary school, I had classmates who were very rich. And I would recall them comparing toys or clothes or belongings that they had with each other. And they would sometimes challenge each other. They would say, my dad is better than your dad. That is no different from the way the younger son looked at the father, as if he were like a Santa Claus. Yeah? So it's like, whatever I need or I want, my dad will give it to me. But if he doesn't give it to me, then maybe he's not doing his job as a father. Brothers and sisters, do we sometimes find ourselves praying to God only when we need something from Him? And then, once we receive what we ask for, do we stop praying and maybe even fail to just thank Him? Anyway, He's Santa Claus, no? He'd understand. Anyway, that's His job. Now, of course, the elder son, he was very different from his brother. This elder son, he was very dutiful, responsible. He was hardworking, he was loyal. He stood by his family. He stayed with his father, while his brother left and wasted his life. But then something happened when the prodigal son, the younger son, repented, and the father forgave him. Now, when the elder son found out about this, all of his hidden resentments came out. All of these years I slaved for you, and yet you never gave me even a young goat to celebrate with my friends. Brothers and sisters, have you ever felt tired sometimes of serving, of caring, of fulfilling your appointed mission in life? Have there been sometimes moments when you've prayed with maybe bitterness or resentment? Lord, why are you doing this to me? Or why are you making this so hard? Or when will you ever give me a break? So if any of us have felt at times that God doesn't care about us outside of our fulfilling of our responsibilities, if any of us have felt used and abused by God, then maybe we identify with the elder son. Like him, we may view God as a demanding taskmaster, a father who isn't happy with imperfection, who is only happy with you when you are fulfilling your responsibilities, who only appreciates your hard work, your sacrifice. And in fact, the harder, the better. The more sacrifice, the better. The more perfect, the better. No mistakes. Now, as for me, as I look at my own life, I did not see God as a Santa Claus. I was very much like the older son. I saw God as a taskmaster, especially during the financial difficulties of my family and my own emotional struggles. And in fact, there are still a few times when I read through the sentiments of the elder son, I read the story of the prodigal son. And when I get to the part where the elder son was like having his exchange with his father, I find myself sometimes thinking, you're right. I feel exactly the same way. And yet, both these views of God as Father, whether it is a Santa Claus or a taskmaster, they're very limited and short-sighted. It's almost like looking at one small corner of a very large painting and then just concentrating on that, so much so that we miss out on seeing the whole picture. My experience of financial difficulty was the lens with which I viewed God as Father. And in fact, it was the reason why I had this perception of God. When I graduated from college, my father experienced a lot of financial troubles. And because of this, from that moment on, I had to work hard for everything. Nothing was ever given to me. In fact, when I started my career after college, I was already in debt. May utang na ako. Just because my father had so many debts. Now, while I saw it as a mission from God to help my parents through the difficulties, more than that, oftentimes I saw it as a burden that I had to carry. I called it a cross. And it was not a cross that I accepted with open arms. It was a cross that felt really like a burden. And sometimes I felt that burden just got heavier and heavier. And often I blamed God and my own dad for making my life so difficult. But by the grace of God, as time passed, I began to notice there are certain threads in my life. First, no matter how difficult the task ahead of me, somehow I always received the strength and help to overcome it. Second, despite how difficult and how grave my family's financial troubles, through it all I've been able to support my mom and my dad and give my own family, a good life. And third, most importantly, my own bitterness has slowly given way to grace and surrender. And through it all, God has been the thread that has tied my life together. In Isaiah chapter 46 verse 4, God promises us, I am He who will sustain you. I have made you and I will carry you. I will sustain and rescue you. And He promises this to us, not just for the moment, but for the whole of our life. And so it turns out, God is Santa Claus after all, but maybe not in the ways that we think or expect. He does not just give us material blessing or enough for the day. More than that, He gives us the truest of gifts, the most precious of gifts. These are gifts that time never takes away. For example, He gives us faith, hope, endurance, peace, wisdom, kindness, mercy. In the letter of James chapter 1 verse 17, the apostle writes, every good and perfect thing comes from the Father of light. And not only that, not only does He give us these precious things, He takes away many of the bad things, our need for approval, our love for material and temporary things, our self-centeredness. Now, in my mind, that's not really a bad trade-off at all. And it also turns out that God our Father is a taskmaster. But again, not in the way we think. Yes, He gives us a mission. Yes, He gives us responsibilities. Yes, He puts challenges in our path. But this is not for us to be discouraged or defeated. He intends for us to be triumphant, to give glory to Him, to rise above our circumstances. And He gives us the means to do it. He walks with us through our difficulties. And in this process, we become the clay that is formed in the potter's hand, as is said in Isaiah chapter 64 verse 8. And we also become the lamp that is not hidden under a bushel, but instead gives light to everyone in the house, as it is written in the Gospel of Matthew chapter 15 verse 15. I look back at my life now and I see how God the Father has led me through every step of it, even those moments I thought He was absent. And not just through the events that have happened, but even the process of my own relationship with Him. In Psalms chapter 139, verse 16, the psalmist says, "Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book was written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me." I saw how the Father's plan has unfolded in my life and how He has kept me safe. And if I could go back in time and talk to my younger self, that younger self of mine who was angry and bitter, I would tell him about the words of Jeremiah in chapter 29, verse 11. I would tell him, trust God the Father. He wants nothing but the best for you, for us, for His children. He has a plan for us, a plan to give us a hope and a future. And if we trust Him enough so that we follow His plan, we will get to that future that we hope for one day. And when I saw the larger thread of God's plan for me, my own feelings towards my father began to change. I started to recall and appreciate all the good things in him. I recall how he would always be there for me, in good times and in bad. He would listen to me, give me advice on friends, relationships, and school. He would spend time playing basketball with me. He would even talk to my friends. He would even get to know my friends. And I recall how he would even listen to the music that I liked, even if he didn't like it, just so that he could relate better with me. My father accepted me for who I was. And he always forgave and forgot my mistakes. And so over time, I realized how mistaken I was. My dad was not a bad provider at all. He was a great provider. Because when it came to love, he was the very best at it. How about you, brothers and sisters? How has your experience with your own father affected your own view of God as Father? And are there ways that you can heal this perception of Him? And in the process, also heal the perception of your own father. I realized my dad showed me the same love that God the Father did. In Isaiah chapter 49, verse 16, God assures us, "Behold, I have inscribed your name on the palms of my hands." In St. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 1, verse 3, He is the Father of compassion, the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles. He sees us in our lowest moments. In fact, He knows everything we are going to do before we even do them. It surprises me to reflect that He knows even the times I will turn away from Him, when I forget Him, or when I will get angry with Him, and yet He chooses to love me just the same. I ask myself as a father, how would I react if I knew Maya, my daughter, would be angry with me? Will I still choose to love her and be there for her? My answer, of course, is yes. Because God the Father Himself does the very same thing for me. And so now, beyond any success or trial that I think I will face in life, I feel more confident to say that these are all just part of the plan, the Father's plan, and that the greatest blessing is that He is there with me to see me safely through that whole plan. And in return, I consider knowing Him as a loving Father to be my own great treasure. In the first letter of John, chapter 3, verse 1, it is written, "See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God." God is proud and happy to call us His children. He's not an absentee Father, not a distant Father, not a punitive disciplinarian of a Father, not a Father who wants perfection. He's just a Father who loves us, who has engraved our names in the palm of His hand. So brothers and sisters, let's spend now this sacred silence and let's talk to God our Father. And let's examine the ways, if there are ways that we misinterpret Him or we think differently of Him. if there are ways that we are perceiving Him in our life at present that are hindering us from seeing Him as the true Father of love, let's bring it up to Him. In fact, He probably knows what you're about to say. There is no hurt and sadness. In fact, that is beyond the reach of our Father's love.
I'm here to share with you about false image of God. I remember when my sister got hospitalized, I was just elementary grade. No choice, my parents need to leave me with our neighbor. We called her Lola Primi. So, in 2 days, she taught me to pray and so many stories about Jesus. During our meals, she used to tell me to finish my food, no leftover, because that was a blessing from God and He will not give me more blessings if I did not finish my food. Our food that time was ampalaya and rice only. I'm on elementary grade that time and I don't like vegetable, but I was forced to finish my meal because she said it was blessing from God and God will punish if I did not finish those food and God will not bless me anymore. So, because I'm afraid for that, I followed her. And she kept telling me to be a good person because bad person will be punished by God. I grew up with that reminders and image of God. Yes, that image creates fear and distance with God. God is love. There is no room for fear, but a perfect love drives out fear because fear implies punishment and no one who is afraid has come to perfection in love. From 1 John chapter 4 verse 18. Really, God will make a way for us to know Him more. I remember my very first Advent retreat with Verbum Day. It was in Verbum Day, Tagaytay. I think it was my very first experience praying more personal, and I felt much more closer with Him. To realize that it was not really that hard to come closer and surrender with Him and tell all my secrets, sacrifices, frustrations, and plans, many more. He will just listen and let you realize what is good and not. My prayer and constant dialogue with God changed the perception of a punishment God. I'm not also a perfect person. I have also many mistakes in life and wrong decisions. But as I can remember, no punishment received by God. Instead, a blessing of relationship with Him. The story of the prodigal son, told by Jesus, is a picture of God the Father's love for His children. In this story, the Father is moved with compassion when He sees His son return home after he had left and wasted his inheritance. He just only proved to me that He is not a punishing God, but a loving Father. For me now, based on my experiences in life, God is not a punishing God, but a God who will console me and a loving Father.